Welcome into Season 5, Episode number 14 of the Outlap F1 podcast. We've got two races to talk about this weekend. It was one of the best weekends in all of motorsport. You've got Andy, and I'm along with just Cody tonight. We thought we were going to have a full boat show, but circumstances have tended to prevent that. But Cody, you and I have seen each other a good chunk of the day, so I kind of know how you're doing, but tell everybody else how you're doing.
I'm doing fantastic. We had a great day earlier going out and playing around at golf. It was a blast. And now we're coming back ready to talk about a very full weekend of motorsport. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Indy 500 in addition to the Monaco Grand Prix, which was, as we're going to get into, probably the best one we've seen in a while. Doing fantastic.
Yeah, I tried to do, because like in my youth I used to be able to do an all-nighter and be okay, but like I tried to do the whole F3, F2, F1 Monaco and then Indy 500. I couldn't do it. I have to go back and watch the F2 race. I've heard it's actually pretty interesting, so I intend to do that, but for right now I just kind of left it with F1 and then Indy. And that was 6 consecutive hours of motorsport, and that was fun enough for me. So we're going to get into all that in just a minute. But as always, we are proud members of the Ship It Studios podcast network, and you can find our show on Twitter. It's still functional. It was good to interact with a bunch of people this weekend. Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and of course YouTube at Outlet F1 Podcast gets you there. You can see our link tree in our show notes to find all the ways you can interact with us. If you're watching this video and you happen to be on YouTube, do us a favor, click the like and subscribe button. Doesn't do anything for us, but it helps get our content to you that much quicker. If you're on your favorite podcasting app and you like what you're hearing, do us a favor, click the 5-star button. That, again, also helps us just get our content to you that better, that much more quicker. You come to the up a little bit more when you're searching for stuff. So, again, totally up to you, but we would appreciate it if you are so inclined to do that. You can email our show, as always, www.outletf1.com gets you there. You can find our wonderful website, www.outletf1.com gets you there. I may have botched the email. Chat now at outlapf1.com, in case I didn't say that right. That gets you the email. Thank you always as always, wow, for our continued monetary supporters. We're grateful to the following people: Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and of course, Jonathan Scott. If you'd like to help promote our show via our Anchor app, please see our link in our show notes, $1, $5. It all goes back into trying to make the show better. We've got some good stuff, hopefully on the way in the near future to debut. I have a new sound effect that I want to put out. It's all kind of in the works. A lot of it's even ready, but I just have to make sure that I'm confident in it. But anyway, if you'd like to do that, we would see our link in our show notes, and we would be most grateful. You can take advantage, as always, from the good folks at Manscaped. We can use our code OUTLAP to get 20% off and free shipping, so go ahead and check that out. Our buddy Vincenzo Landino, who was tweeting a lot of good stuff over the course of the weekend, go check his Twitter out. He also has a shirt line, the F1Guy.com, F1 quality merch at not necessarily the F1 quality price. Good, whole, real good merchandise for you. We know how expensive F1 merch can sometimes get. Trust me, I have plenty of evidence to that. And our final sponsor, the Portage Park Development Project, the thriving community in the Upland Metaverse. If you're from Chicago, Portage Park will sound familiar because the Upland Metaverse is based on real-world cities and properties. And Portage Park is a real neighborhood, and it wants to show the best that it has to offer, so come join them. Links to the Portage Park Discord server, racing track maps, and socials are in our podcast show notes. And as always, we hope to see you in the metaverse. Woo! All right, let's dive into what I called the breakfast course of our full day of motorsport. That would be the Monaco Grand Prix weekend. We will start that with our headlines of the day. Cody, I'll let you go first. I see we've got some notes from James has chimed in, and then I'll go after that. So, Cody, what you thought?
Sounds good. My headline of the day is Supermax strikes again. 2/10 back in quality with one sector to go? No problem. 55 lap old mediums? No sweat. Wet weather? What rain? Max is inevitable, and we once again saw that on display this weekend with him winning by a significant margin, no matter what obstacle stood before him.
Yeah, so James, who wanted to be, like, I'm not being facetious here. He wanted to be on the show really bad. He had to do a turnaround and go get a very critical item back from where he was in Michigan, and we wish him all the best on his multiple travels. Dee wanted to be on the show as well, but she was feeling a little under the weather tonight. So it's just going to be us two. But James chimed in and said, see, Monaco can be fun. Most fun quali session in some time, and I would agree with that. My headline of the weekend is, who knew that F1 cars are the sort that apparently can take a licking and keep on ticking? I saw lots of cars hitting walls and kept on going. Also, we're going to be talking about that qualifying lap from Max and what he did in that third sector for a long time. Folks, I'm here to tell you that's the stuff of legends. That was greatness on display. We're going to get into all that in just a minute, but woo, what a quali session. All right. Why not wait any longer? Let's dive into what is always one of the more significant qualies of the year. We know Monaco has got it. That's really where a good chunk of the race is decided on Saturday. So let's get into the quali session. All right. Going out, Max's in P20, Max's teammate Sergio Perez, he crashed in Q1 and was unable to advance further. We also got, because of the cranes, a really good shot of the Red Bull underbelly, and a lot of spy photos I'm sure were taken to see what is the secret sauce in that Red Bull. P19 was Joe Granyu, P18 Nico Hulkenberg, P17 his teammate Kevin Magnussen. Not a great day or weekend for the Haas boys. P16, just missing out on advancing to Q2, was our American Logan Sargent. Going through to Q2, but going no farther, in P15 was Valtteri Bottas. P14 was Lance Stroll. P13, Alex Albon. P12 was Nick DeVries. And P11, bit of a good showing for this gentleman, was Oscar Piastri. The top 10 from 10 to 1. In P10 was Lando Norris. P9 was Yuki Tsunoda. P8, George Russell. P7, Pierre Gasly. P6, Lewis Hamilton. P5, Carlos Sainz. P4 was Esteban Ocon. Good showings for the Alpines this weekend. P3, Charles Leclerc. P2, Fernando Alonso. And in P1, with a lap time of 111.365, was Max Verstappen. All right, a lot to discuss with the quali. Cody, what were your big point headlines? I've got stuff to talk about from all three sessions, I think, but I'll let you go first.
I think so as well. I think if we're going from Q1 to start, the thing we got to talk about is Sergio Perez having didn't look like a particularly severe incident, but just lost control of the car enough to hit the wall and destroy his side pod and pretty much take him out of the rest of qualifying, which, as we know, going around Monaco is not the place where you want to be out in quali in Q1 because it's impossible to pass. You're not going to see any crazy 20th to third place performances here, no matter how good that car is. And yeah, I think the team knew it. He knew it as soon as it happened that it was going to be a rough weekend. I really like Sergio Perez, so it was sad to see, but pretty much his own mistake. I don't think there was any failure on the car or anything like that to point toward for blame. So yeah, sad to see, but he paid the price for it.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like the back end of the car kind of stepped out on him as he's going into. Now, I'm terrible at names of corners, so I'm going to try here. But I believe that was Sandovat was where he was going into. There is an escape road. There's that famous escape road where lots of people sometimes pull off and abort their laps. He was trying to stay off of it. He was trying to get the car to turn to go up the hill there. It didn't, and the back end just kind of crushes the wall. Took the rear suspension off. That was his session over. And like I said, because of the way that you have to do the marshalling in Monaco, the only way to get the car cleared with any semblance of time is to literally pick it up and move it to a safe spot. So we got to see the crane for a couple of teams. We got to see the underbelly of the Mercedes in one of the practices, and we got to see the underbelly of the Red Bull. And of course, that is, what is the secret sauce to this floor? That was on full display, and not necessarily something that Red Bull wanted to do, but unfortunately, that is what happens when you crash in Monaco. Just looking at the Q1s who didn't make it, bad weekend for Haas. Kind of across the board. That was kind of surprising, especially given their form in Miami on one lap. You go from Kevin Magnussen finishing fourth in the quali there to, now, kind of back out to the outhouse here and on both Haas's out in Q1. And this is that dancing on the razor's edge that you're going to see with this midfield throughout the course of the rest of this season. You're going to see, tracks where certain teams do better and tracks where certain teams do worse. This one would seem to be Haas's bogey, so they had to take it here. Kind of gutted for Logan that it was just a matter of hundredths of seconds that he didn't get quite out of Q1. Going through, to Q2, I thought a standout to the good was Oscar Piastri, who looked nowhere in the practices. He looked 6 and 7 tenths off of Lando throughout most of the weekend, but managed to pull it together, and he just misses out on the Q3 shootout by not bumping his teammate, who did have a moment in the Q2 session. Lando trying to set a really good second sector right around the harbor area is where he clipped the wall. That was his session done. And you can say whatever you want about the McLaren car, but don't be besmirching those McLaren pit guys, because they did about a 25-second cats of F1. There he is. Who do we have here?
This is Tiggy, and
that is Tiggy.
She is being very friendly, probably because we were out all day.
Welcome to the show. Anyway, just to get back to Lando, the pit crew changed the entire front suspension in about a 25-minute job. They managed to pull it off in about 10, 15 minutes. They did get him out for Q3. We'll talk a little about his couple laps in Q3 and his run-in with one Charles Leclerc in the tunnel there. But we'll do that in just a minute. A standout to the bad when you're looking at Q2. What's up with Lance Stroll, man? That's where the driver makes the difference. We all say that about Monaco. He's definitely got a good car, but what do you think happened there?
My initial reaction upon seeing him going out in 14th was, God, man, Lance Stroll just sucks. He's like nowhere even close to Fernando Alonso most weekends, and like he's got to be trying. But later on, I read an article that there was actually damage to his car, at least so they claim, that was resulting in the poorer performance. And they said that, that had the car not had that damage, that he should have been able to make it into Q3 no problem. I guess we'll just have to, give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. If that is the case, that's just really poor luck on his part, because as we see, Fernando Alonso had the pace to probably had the pace to be on pole, except for some craziness that we're going to be talking about here shortly. But yeah, even so, 14th is not where that car should be, and I'm hoping that he's able to start pulling his weight better and getting that team some points, because as it stands, and we're going to talk about this later, is that Mercedes is now right on Aston Martin's ass in the constructors' points, and I feel like that really shouldn't be the case if both drivers were performing up to the car's potential. That's just my opinion on him, though.
Oh no, definitely. No, I'm with you on that one. Whether or not you like or dislike his personality, he can be a little scruffy around the edges. I totally get that. And as a driver, he's usually been up to the capabilities of the car. It was surprising to me not to see him around that P7, P6, because that's kind of where I think that car really is. And, you add the Alonso factor, and you can add the 2 or 3 tenths that he brings to it. So yeah, I would say that was kind of surprising in a disappointing way to see him down in 14th. But oh my gosh, do we have to talk about Q3? What a 12-minute session. I guess we should just kind of go straight to the end, because why not deal with what the best part of it was? The last runs in Q3. Everybody's got trying to get the best tire life. It was this long parade with about 50 seconds to go. Everybody was sitting, so everybody was going to get a clean shot at it. You see the deltas and you see the sector times come up, and sector 1, Fernando Alonso's purple and Max is a tenth down, and sector 2, Alonso's purple again and Max isn't on it. And my gosh, here's my prediction coming to fruition. This is what I've been saying. I had the tweet ready to go, and then I still haven't figured out how Max gets 0.3 in a 19-second sector 3, but he manages to pull off 0.3 of a second in a 19-second sector 3. 18-second sector 3 is what he turned out to be. It was not even close to 19 seconds. But he does it. He hits the wall not 1, not 2, not 3, no, at 4 different times in that sector. One of the most, I don't know if he knew the real-time delta, but if he did, my God, that's amazing. Even if he didn't, that sector 3 is bonkers. Absolute bonkers. I've dubbed it the elegant version of a Ross Chastain. Cody, what's your thought on it?
So that Q3 was crazy for a lot of reasons. You got, first of all, the track evolution was such that, like, you had so many different drivers that were trading off the pole time repeatedly throughout that entire session. Like, even
that's right, yeah.
Even at one point, Esteban Ocon had the pole time, and he ended up qualifying 4th, which was extremely respectable. I was not expecting the Alpine cars to be anywhere near the front, and Esteban Ocon put in a monster lap that I don't think anyone saw coming. Charles Leclerc had it at one point, and then, like you're saying, you come down to that last lap, and Fernando's got the purple first sector, purple second sector. He looks like he has it in the bag, and I was like going nuts, ready for him to take the pole, because the pole gets you such an advantage here at Monaco. I thought that if he had it, he had a legitimate shot at the win, and that would have been the perfect story. But then what we got instead was something even more ridiculous, and Max taking that crazy time dip in the 3rd sector. And I actually saw a really cool, actually saw it on Reddit, a really cool computer graphic that showed the two cars.
Is it the overlay of the two? Yeah.
An overlay of the two cars going around the track, and throughout the entire lap, coming up to just like the last 2 turns, Fernando Alonso had a pretty significant advantage. And then just in those last 2 turns, I don't know what it was, how he got it around that turn so fast, but Verstappen pulled off some magic. And yeah, just in the last 2 turns alone, got a strong enough, improvement to overtake Alonso. And it's got to be heartbreaking for Alonso, but yeah, Max was pulling off some magic, like bumper cars. Maybe he saw the time delta and he's like, well, I'm just going to, put everything I've got into it, because at this point, what does it matter if I destroy the car? And he pulled it off. Like, it was definitely a mark of being one of the greatest.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it right. The fact that we had there were 3 different drivers who were in the P1 position as they were crossing the line. Mm-hmm. The first bullet was Esteban Ocon, who came from nowhere. I mean, they'd had a good session, but they were like P7, P6, P5 range. You thought they were going to be kind of battling the Mercedes, and all of a sudden, here's Ocon on the pole, and then Leclerc crosses the line, and the homeboy in Monaco takes what he thinks is a pole position, and it's short-lived, and then Alonso crosses the line, and he's got what you think is the pole position. I mean, just look at these times. 1:11.365 for Verstappen. Fernando Alonso, 1:11.449. Leclerc, 1:11.471. Ocon, 1:11.553. That's a matter of a front wing.
Yeah.
Difference between 4 cars over the course of a 71-second lap around Monaco. this is, I mean, it was a Q3 session for the ages. It was exactly what the sport needed after the kind of not great racing we saw in Miami. Let's be real about it. It wasn't the best.
Mm,
So, I mean, to come here at a track that has had a history, that has had some things said really good about it, some things said not so good about it. If you could somehow translate this is what these regs were designed to be, to where everybody at least has a shot at it. Now we know here you don't have the super duper DRS. And here you don't have the other things that make the Red Bull the exceptional car that it is. But
hmm
just amongst the drivers where it really mattered, to see all of those efforts coming through was amazing. Now, let's talk. Here's my take on Max Verstappen's cheat code third sector, because that's what it felt like to me as I'm watching the timing. Not only does he not damage the car, but like I said, he hit the wall at least 4 times. And sector 3 is not that big of a sector. It's the end of the swimming pool, a turn, and then the loop around Rascasse, and then the blast up to the line. And oh, by the way, he hits the wall on the inside retaining wall during the blast up to the line, which I've never seen anybody do that before. So just to take those different lines and to be able to put all of that together in such real time that quick, like I said, it's the equivalent of doing an elegant version of the Ross Chastain thing, where he just rode the
hmm
wall and got pulled back 5 seconds because he had to have it.
hmm
I would say track limits, but he pushed them. What else do you do?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's not like you can really go too far off of track limits in that part of the track. There's a wall, so why
right.
not use it? He seemed like he was pretty much just trying to go for the straightest line, I think, possible back to the start finish line, and was just going to get anything that was in the way. But a lot of pictures of his tires after the quali section
Right.
with all the rubber scuffed off the sides, which was really
The
cool. And
rims, the rims looked like something I once did to my car once. I hate to admit it, but I did that. And I know exactly what you have to do to have that happen. And that's metal rubbing on metal. Um,
hmm
it was, it absolutely that. I mean, I guess my other bigger point is, regardless of what you think about Max Verstappen, whether you like him or not, whether his personality drives with you or not, is one thing. But damn, that's the type of thing we're going to be putting that up there with Lewis Hamilton's pole lap in Singapore. You're going to put that up there with Ayrton Senna rolling around Monaco in qualifying too,
hmm
because that's just where it should be. I mean, just hands down. I don't know really what else to say about it other than that's the Addles. Like many years from now, we're going to be looking at that lap and going, "Holy crap!"
hmm Now, before we move on from qualifying, I do think there is one other thing we have to address, and that is a certain incident between Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris. I got that right, I think.
Yep, yep.
And if I remember correctly, it had to do with Charles Leclerc impeding Lando Norris during the end of near the end of Q3 in the tunnel section.
So to
And
kind of set, okay, so I'll kind of set the stage. And so because Lando hits the wall in Q2, his timing going into Q3 is all kind of not aligned with the rest of the people making attempts. They get him out with approximately 7 minutes left, which again, a great feat. Kudos on the team. It was great to see that the car functioned. There was no problems with it. Like it was good to go. And it was a major league repair that usually takes, like I said, 25 minutes to a half an hour to do, that they pulled off in like 15 minutes.
yeah,
So he gets out there. He does set one flying attempt, so he registers a time. Now he's trying to build his confidence back up in the car, back up in everything. He's going to do his second attempt. He's up in the first sector on his previous time. He gets to the tunnel and has to abort. And he has to abort because there's Leclerc in the racing line in the middle of the tunnel. I don't know how much you can fault Leclerc there. I think it's much more a Ferrari miscue there, because I mean F1 cars have mirrors you can't really see until you're right on top of it, and when you're going in and out of the tunnel between light and dark and light again, so it's hard to see if somebody's coming. And you've got the engine, so you can't necessarily really hear anybody coming.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that I really fault Leclerc, but I'm surprised that, again, with all these guys having these immaculate GPS systems and everything, that a call didn't come to him much sooner that Norris was coming. So by the time he tries to jink over and get out the way, it's too late, and Norris had to abort his lap. And as it turned out, that was his last real flyer. So no farther than P10 for him. The stewards did agree that it was impeding. They assessed Leclerc a 3-place grid penalty, so he flows in the starting grid from P3 to P6, which is in Monaco. If you're trying to get a result and try to get a podium, that's almost a death sentence here. So, another Charles Leclerc in Monaco moment. I wish I had James on to kind of get his take on what he thought about it. From Lando's perspective, it looked like it was blocking. I don't know even if Lando finishes that lap, how much better up he is. He's maybe if I'm being really nice, he's maybe P9, maybe P8. Because I don't think the car had a whole lot more in it.
I don't think he stood to improve that much. And I agree with you that how much of it could really have been Charles Leclerc's fault. Like, maybe shouldn't have been on the racing line at that point in time. Probably should have gotten a call from his team. But it definitely peeved off Lando Norris. There's a picture going around on social media of him giving Leclerc the finger after qualifying, and a lot of really nasty messages on social media about people calling for Ferrari strategists to be fired and stuff like that. And it's like, they made a mistake. It happened. He paid the price. He got the grid penalty, which more or less took him out of the running to have a shot for the win. So, I don't feel like they need to really, people don't need to be jerks and pile on what's already been established. But yeah, too bad for both of them.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, and I keep thinking, like, okay, I don't know that if I was kind of ruling the universe, what I would love to see is some way of being able to restore Lando's attempt versus penalizing Leclerc there. Because I think the qualifying times ought to be able to stand on their own. But like, if you do that, let's say if you gave Lando one uninterrupted attempt, then you're going to have teammates impeding people, and you're going to have I don't know that there's a good solution to it. So I don't know that I really have a fix for it, other than it kind of was what it was, and that's just how it gets adjudicated in F1. So I was okay with leaving it there. Like I said, I don't know how much better Lando really would have done. If he doesn't hit the wall, I think it's a different story, because throughout the course of the practices, he was in the 7th, 6th, 5th range. He would have had to really push to get a P5, but it was maybe possible if he put it all together. But once he hit the wall, I think his confidence kind of got shattered. He had to build it back up. He just didn't have enough time to do it. So again, I don't know, even if he's not there, what that does to that lap in that circumstance. But again, unfortunately, we're not going to find out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that was a lot more time than we usually spend on quali, but it was because it was so damn good. All right. So we will now flip over. We will drop our green flag, go lights out, and we will start with our back markers. I guess we can also start by saying that for the most part, the first 50 so odd laps was kind of sort of your typical Monaco. And then the last 20 was, let's just say there was some rain that popped up. And that kind of threw some dices at it. But we'll go through kind of each kind of story as we kind of see it. So we'll start with our back markers. Guy did not have a great qualifying. That translated into not a fun race day for him at all. The non-classified Lance Stroll technically takes P20 on the day. P19 was Kevin Magnussen. P18, Logan Sargent. He went to school big time around Monaco this weekend as well. P17 was Nico Hulkenberg. P16, probably better than a lot of people thought he was going to do, starting at P20, but that would be Sergio Perez. P15 was Yuki Tsunoda. We'll have to talk about him. P14, Alex Albon. And P13 was Joe Granu in the Alfa Romeo. I guess big talking points in the back markers. One, Stroll, lots of incidents, lots of broken front wings, lots of broken everything. And then eventually the car finally gave up on him, even though he tried to do the whole take a licking and keep on ticking thing, but it just didn't work for him.
Too much licking.
Yeah, too much licking, not enough ticking, and that ended kind of his day. The part where he had the yellow flag and then cleared his own yellow flag by running over his front wing, which freed up his tire, was probably, I give you probably the best Lance Stroll moment of the race, and I can't really sum it up any better than that. Um, again, we kind of talked about Perez, Yuki Tsunoda, who was looking really well through a good chunk of the dry running of the race. Once they went over to wets, he started to really, really struggle. You heard a couple of very loud and Yuki Tsunoda-esque radio messages on the international feed there. Could not handle the braking issue. He then dropped down the order. He finishes 2 laps off the leader, but he was pushing P9 for a good chunk of that race. Is it just inexperience in the wet? Because, I think overall, he's not having the worst year for AlphaTauri.
He's been doing, I feel, very consistently so far this year. Pretty much, I think, extracting the best that you can get out of that AlphaTauri car, which has usually not looked particularly strong. And he looked like he was on track to do it again. And like you said, pick up a few points, finishing P9 or maybe even P10 because he was starting to slip back a little bit there at the end. But he was getting messages from the team telling him that he had to pick up the pace, and he was like, guys, like, these brakes are awful. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I can't stop. And they're like, oh, just adjust your brake balance a little bit and push, like, do it. And he had that great radio message where he came back and said, do you want me to crash? And I seem to remember that it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, because he did end up having an issue where he slid into the runoff area and lost pretty much any hope of getting any points out of that. So a little bit of a disappointing end to the day for him. He looked like he was on track to have a pretty successful day. Like we were talking about with Sergio Perez, it just went from bad to worse. He had so many incidents throughout the day. He ran into the back of Magnussen. He ran into George Russell at one point during the race when Russell re-entered the track relatively unsafely during the rainy part, and Perez hit him hard enough that one of them went slightly airborne. And yeah, he just, one incident after another, couldn't get anywhere out of the back markers. And I think eventually Red Bull just decided that the writing was on the wall, that there was no hope of getting any points out of Perez's day. And then at the end, they seemed to be pretty much using him like a guinea pig for tires to see whether it was worth it to pit, Max for this or that, for wet weather, or go back to dries. And just a weekend to forget for Perez.
Yeah, weekend to forget for Perez, a weekend to forget for Yuki, as it turns out. Alex Albon in the Williams, P14 is probably a little bit better for him. Logan Sargent, I think, went to the school of Monaco Hard Knocks. At one point, they were going to try to run him on softs, basically to the end, so he could learn how to run softs once his competitive day was kind of done. But then when the wet weather hit, he had a couple spins himself, lots of spins. It got very wet very quickly, which is something you can sometimes see in Monaco. We saw it actually happen last year before the race. Well, this happened 50 laps into the race, so everybody had to be on their toes and make adjustments quickly. We'll talk about one who maybe adjusted a bit too late. But first, we will get into the midfield, and the midfield finds P12 with Nick DeVries, P11 Valtteri Bottas, P10 was Oscar Piastri, P9 Lando Norris, P8 was Carlos Sainz, P7 was Pierre Gasly, P6 was Charles Leclerc, P5 was George Russell, and P4 Lewis Hamilton. So some good days here. We should definitely talk about Mercedes. I think they did bring their updates to this track. Whether or not it was necessarily needed or not, I don't know. I'll kind of leave that to the judges out there. But they managed to, improve on their starting position, which is basically, I think, all you can really hope for in a Monaco race over the course of the 78 laps. So good days, I think, for Hamilton and Russell.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. My personal opinion is that the Mercedes upgrades Probably didn't make that much of a difference here at Monaco. I think they probably would have slotted in right around where they did slot in, regardless of whether they had the old zero side pod design or the new, more Red Bull-esque design. But pretty good day for them. Made it through, made it through the rainy situation, and both of them finished, fourth, fifth. Russell finishing fifth, despite I believe he had some sort of penalty for that incident with Perez, but it
Yeah,
did
he,
not
he
end up
did get a
mattering
five
that much.
second penalty, but it ended up not mattering.
Charles Leclerc coming in sixth, pretty much where he started the race. Didn't think there was really a whole lot he could do to catch up to the front runners. Um, Carlos Sainz had some Ferrari strategy woes that he had some not so nice things to say over the radio about. Um, feel bad for him. Seemed to have a decent weekend going, and whether the strategy was ultimately what caused him to finish near the bottom of the points or not, to be seen. But he's definitely having some frustrations so far this season. A lot of things not going his way. Um,
Yeah, I took that as kind of the culmination of a lot of different things. I don't know, like in his post race sound, he was much more understanding and he kind of calmed down. And I think, you know, whether you're doing 200 miles an hour or whether you're doing 150 miles an hour around Monaco, it's you're going to see some red mist, and I think that was the radio message.
mhm,
And I get it. He's frustrated. He wants to be doing better than he is. He wants the car to be doing better than it is. He wants to be doing better than it is. Some of his frustration was of his own making. He did have some spins,
mhm.
but he was able to keep the car going. He did manage to bring it back home in the points. So not great points for Ferrari, but decent points, I think, on the day overall. Standouts, you know, we haven't quite even gotten to the podium, but one of the standouts I thought of the weekend was the form of Alpine and Gasly, who had signs on his rear end for basically 77 of the 78 laps, even throughout all the pit stops, manages to keep that position. So some light shining on Alpine. They got called out by the team boss. They've at least seemed to take that to heart and at least turned what is effectively their home race, because there is no French Grand Prix this year, into something good. So good day for them. Uh, Again, got to talk about my homeboys here. Both McLarens in the points. It was good to see. I think they made the best out of the day that they were presented with. So, um, I mean, one, Piastri managing to get in the points, I think was good. Starting P11, you weren't necessarily sure you were going to be able to get both cars into the points. But I do want to at least shout out, I know I'm a homer here. I don't care. Lando Norris on wet tires was a thing. Um, let's just say once he got going on those wet tires, he got his confidence up. He was the fastest guy on track. I've seen independent data trackers all say that he was by far the fastest car in the wet, and that's even including Max. Um, just for reference, he comes out. He was actually P11 when he came out of the pits because McLaren boxed him onto a set of hards 4 laps before they had to box him again, to
Oops.
go over to the full wets. So they did the dumb thing and screwed him up, and he just didn't care. He just went to work, did the corners, got going, passed his teammate legitimately. That was not a team order. He does that. He comes up on Yuki Tsunoda. Now, Yuki was having all the brake issues and all that, but the reason Yuki was getting the hurry up was because Lando was coming. And he gets by him, a great pass going into that Sandoval corner. So turn one. That moved him back up into ninth place. He was at that point 48 seconds behind Carlos Sainz. The ending delta to Sainz was about 23, 24 seconds. So in 7 laps, he took out half of that issue, and he was
Mhm.
right on Verstappen's bumper. He thought about maybe trying to unlap himself. He decided better off not to do it because there was really nothing to be gained. He wasn't going to be able to pull the 20 seconds that he was still down on Sainz. But in the wet, dude brought it, and that was at least fun to see. In a year of a lot of frustration, at least I got to
Mhm.
watch him have some fun.
Yep, very stellar performance for Lando in the wet. I Going back to your comment from earlier, it's really easy, or sorry, really interesting to see how the midfield cars are kind of trading who's squeezing out those last couple points on a weekly basis. We had think in Miami, McLaren was nowhere to be found, whereas Haas was taking those last few points. And now, one race, one skipped race in between, one race later, it's gone completely the other direction. So I think we're going to see a lot of that scrapping for the last couple points, and it's really just going to depend on the track, which team is able to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few, people outside of necessarily our little show come on and ask me, because they know I'm a big McLaren fan, where the heck are they? And the answer that I can give you is I can't really tell you. On some days, they're the 9th best team. On other days, they're maybe the 5th best team. It's really hard to try to peg. That car is very circuit specific. It's very weather specific. And so here was cloudy, cool weather. It obviously works pretty good in the wet, because both Norris and Piastri were able to show pretty good. But I mean, in that hot, slick Bahrain, struggled, hot and dry, bad weekend for them. Miami, slow speed corners, hot, sticky conditions. Again, just didn't work for them. Couldn't fire up the tire. Couldn't keep the tires in the window for whatever reason. So, and I know that they're just kind of counting down. They did have the one big update to the floor. That was significant. There's talk of pretty much what's going to be, I think, going to be a B-spec car coming. Maybe Austria looks on track for the British Grand Prix. And then we're going to kind of see what they can maybe get out of this season. So it's been I know there's a lot of McLaren fans out there that are frustrated by the results. I am too, trust me. But there are better times ahead. There's things coming. Stay the course is all I can tell you. We just got to have faith and stay the course. There's the hashtag out there, believe in McLaren. Let's just keep doing that if you're a fan like I am. All right. So now we will get into the podium finishers. And these three had a very good day, as it kind of turned out. Well, some had some better days than others. P3, Esteban Ocon in the Alpine makes that qualifying performance, turns it into being on the podium. Happy boy on the podium. That was fun to watch. Fernando Alonso comes home P2. And, of course, the man who's just the man right now, Max Verstappen, P1. Great drives for him. Cody, I'll let you take where you want to go with the podium.
So I think we got to talk about Fernando Alonso's chances at the win. Potentially not ever being there to begin with, but definitely disappearing at a particular part in the race. So first, like you were saying, first 50 laps of Monaco, relatively uneventful, pretty processional, your typical battles of strategy, not a whole lot of passes on track, and the passes that were on track were against people who were not experienced here, like Logan Sargent. Fernando Alonso gradually slipping further and further back from Max Verstappen. Max started the race on the medium tires. Fernando started on the hard tires, which seemed to be maybe a little bit of an odd choice. You figure that, starting in second place, he might want as much grip as possible to help him try to take the lead at the very beginning where he has his best shot. Didn't happen. So fast forward to 45 laps into the race. The rain is definitely coming. And I had actually texted you during the race that, we had both betted on that there were going to be wet weather tires used during the race. And I'm texting you that, looks like we're going to lose out on that bet. Well, suddenly, like immediately after I say that,
okay,
the announcers and the teams are like, oh yeah, it's coming.
Hang on. The text I sent back to you was that much better. You're not in the basement on that. What did I say? I said, it's going to come when they're on the podium. And I wrote, book it, right? And about 35 seconds after I text that, of course, here comes the rain.
Mm-hmm. And it started coming right at that time where, you're at the end of tire life, especially for the mediums that Max was on. And it turned into this interesting scenario where the rain is certainly coming. They kept showing it on the TV broadcast that you could see it in the distance coming. And it seemed like both Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso were trying to hold out as long as they could on the tires that they had, because they were trying to see if they could make those tires last until the rain came and they had to potentially, switch over to wet weather tires. And Max Verstappen made those mediums last way longer than they should have. I think they were
53
saying on the
laps.
broadcast, yeah, they were saying on the broadcast like 40, 45 laps was like the max Pirelli was recommending to do on those mediums, and Max went just that much further and made it work. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso on the hards probably had the better shot of making them last until the wets. And in the beginning, when the rain got there, there was only rain on part of the track at first, and you had a lot of drivers trying to brave with the slicks for that amount of time because the time that you would lose on the wet section with slicks was probably somewhat balanced out by having slicks for the dry part of the track. So you had a lot of drivers trying to survive as long as they could on those slicks. And Fernando Alonso goes into the pits, and I'm thinking, okay, he's taking advantage now. He's going to go over to the wets, and they put him on more slicks. And then a few laps later, ended up bringing him back in for the wets. Now, the only thing that I can think of was going through their head during that part is Max Verstappen had a pretty significant lead on Alonso. I think it dwindled a little bit once the rain started coming in, but it was still a significant lead. And meanwhile, Alonso had, somewhat of a lead over Ocon in third. All I can think of is that they were banking on that the rain wasn't going to stick around that long, and they were going to try to put him on fresh slicks to give him enough grip to hang on through the wet part of the track and hope that that was the strategy that was going to work and allow him to really eat into Max Verstappen's lead. Obviously, that didn't happen. He ended up having to go back in a few laps later for the wet weather tires anyway. If that's what it was and they were taking the gamble, I guess I applaud them for going for it because it didn't look like it was going to happen unless Max crashed anyway. Looked a little silly at the time, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at Fernando's race, it's two different calls that I guess I have question with. One, and you mentioned it too, why are you putting him on the hard tire at the start? Like, this is your shot, Aston Martin. You should throw, if you're going to throw the Hail Mary to go for a win, I would respect that. You're safely in P2 in the constructors, and maybe not so safe because of one of your drivers who can't seem to score consistent points. But it looked like going into this round, you were relatively safe in P2 there. So why not? Race wins are hard to get. Why are you not throwing a set of softs on there and letting a tire whisperer who's shown he can do it before on a track that's impossible to overtake? Why are you not throwing a set of softs and letting him try to dive bomb turn one? You need to put Max in the position where it's either, I hate to use the NASCAR term, but it's checkers or wreckers time in that turn one, man. You got to make him face it because he hasn't had that decision thrown at him this entire year. And you want to see what he's going to do. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but that was your best shot, was a missile dive bomb into turn one, and you didn't take it. I don't understand that. Now, when we get to the part of the rain, it's all kind of down to what data each team had. And I would tell you, looking at the weather app as I'm watching it, as we were texting back and forth, I'm watching the shower. It was slowly, and I mean slowly, coming down south. But you didn't know it wasn't really moving a whole lot east to west. So when it comes in, it's coming in at the part of the track where, had it stayed just around, the hairpin and before the tunnel, and the rest of it stays dry, you might have been able to get away with that for 2, 3, 4, 5 laps. Get a dry line going and maybe make it work. But once it came into the pit lane and that it went a little east to west, or west to east, actually, just that little bit of the bigger cell came in, it was kind of game over. It for a guy who I've seen take that home run strategy of trying to time the tire switch, I was also surprised that they didn't do it. It felt like Aston as a team were comfortable with P2. And I guess maybe that's okay. It is his best finish on the season. But man, when you have an opportunity and the door And Max is not going to open the door a whole lot this year. Let's be really honest,
Mhm.
folks. This was an open. It wasn't open a ton, but it was open a crack. I'm shocked they didn't try to run through it.
Yeah, and Fernando would have been the guy to go for that. Like you've said on many shows in the past, you give that guy a sniff, and he's there. And I feel like they played a little too safe, and that cost them any shot for the win. Maybe they thought that chance was already kind of gone, except for going for the Hail Mary, there at the end. But either way, despite maybe not being able to capitalize on that opportunity, Fernando Alonso P2, everyone's happy. The guy
Oh
is,
no, I mean,
his
without a
career
doubt,
is
this is
renewed.
this is his best result on the season. He was super happy. I love. Did you happen to see the picture of him dive bombing the Red Bull photo?
Yes, I did. That one was fantastic.
Like, and then when Red Bull put out the tweet that said Fernando Alonso joins Red Bull,
Hmm.
which I thought was actually pretty good
Yeah,
on the Red Bull admin there.
yeah,
But
he's
yeah,
definitely.
what else do you say about Max? And once he got it and he got the high ground, he never let it go. And again, going around Monaco in wet tires, it takes something special. I mean, you saw the difference. What happened? Like compare what Max and Lando were able to do on the wet tires to what happened to Yuki. Yuki's running solid P9. I mean, that's just the difference
Mhm.
in some of the driving talent that's on this grid. So yeah, I mean, that is a specific challenge and good for Max to bring it home. Again, I got to say good things about Alpine here. Esteban Ocon making the P3. It's one thing to get it in qualifying. It's another thing, especially when the rain came, to make it last, keeping the Mercedes behind the whole race. A very deserving P3 for Esteban Ocon, who
Mhm.
rockets up the driver's standings, as we will see in just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I would say, one, congrats to Max, but as an overall Monaco race, this had to be one of the better ones.
It's definitely the best one that I've seen in a long time. It was, just it was exciting from even before the rain started to come in, when it was just incoming, and there was the questions of how those strategies were going to play out, and to the point where the track did get wet and turned into an ice rink, and you had cars bouncing off walls and bouncing off each other and making unsafe re-entries and going into the runoff areas, and it was nuts. And despite all of that, we had only two DNFs and no safety cars and no red flags, which to me was just amazing. That
Well, I'll share my theory on that. Yes, there were walls, but there were also, and I think this is done in the interest of safety, and I totally understand this, but there were a lot more soft walls. I saw a lot more Armco barriers in places that in typical Monaco you hadn't necessarily seen before. So yeah, the impacts that, yes, there was contact with the wall, but a lot of times when you're hitting a softer wall, you can take the licking and keep on ticking, as many did, as we saw signs. We saw Russell having off. We saw poor Kevin Magnussen, man. I felt bad for him. I don't know why they decided to leave that poor guy out on the hard tires as long as it was. But,
Mhm.
he trundles back to the pits. They put him on a set of full wets. They're like, well, let's just put on full wets and see what that does. And then he goes out and spins into Santa Bot because parts of it were still dry. I mean,
Mhm.
so I felt really bad for him. But I mean, rain is the equalizer. We saw it come in. It definitely added an entertainment factor to a race that sometimes needs it. But I thought overall for a Monaco weekend, and it may have had something to do with the fact that it was shot differently, that you captured some of the more intricacies of how an F1 car works. I thought the presentation and all that was definitely an improvement, and it made it feel a lot more captivating, at least, from my chair here. So yeah, kudos to good race direction. I think for the most part, not perfect.
Mhm.
You're never going to get it perfect, but I think for the first shot, I thought they did well.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Well, we will leave this race here. We will take a quick break. We will reset. re-rack. We will get into where all the points are. We've got some fan emails to talk about. We'll do some awards, and we'll talk about predictions. It was close, but we have a result this time. We didn't tie. We did not push this time. So come on back. We'll get into all that in a little bit. And then following that, we're going to talk a little bit about the Indy 500 because that was the lunch course, the main event after the Monaco race. If you like, whether you're a fan of one or the other or both, like I am, great day of racing. So we're going to talk all about it. So come on back. All right, you've heard our takes on a very entertaining Monaco Grand Prix weekend. We now move into your takes on what you saw this weekend. It's the fan email segment. And of course, checking in her usual P1 position that we've kind of carved out for her because she's Johnny on the spot with the DMs right after the race ends. That would be our girl, Rachel Fleming. Thank you very much again for some more interaction, Rachel. So she checks in and says, so another day and another Max victory. Is he becoming the Schumacher of this generation? No matter what you throw at him, he defeats it and he wins. And also she checks in and says, also I felt the feed was once again very poor with at one point, instead of seeing what was causing a yellow flag, we just kept seeing endless replays of Sainz losing part of his front wing. An interesting take on the updated feed or the source of the feed there. Cody, what's your thought?
I would agree that Max Verstappen is becoming the Schumacher of this generation after Lewis Hamilton previously held that spot. He is just completely dominant right now. He has the car to take him there, and it's I think if it keeps up like this, it's going to start to get a little ridiculous, like it did with Hamilton and Schumacher before him. As far as the TV feed goes, I actually thought it was I personally thought it was pretty good this time. I've never been a big fan of the Monaco feed as it was before, where it was run by Monaco, and the shots that they always took were really cool, and it's really cool to see those shots kind of remain the same. If you watch older TV broadcasts of the Monaco Grand Prix, it's really cool to see those shots when they're coming through the quick turns and stuff like that with the head-on shot. But we definitely missed a lot, and it was kind of poor direction with that. I feel like the direction was overall improved with F1 running it. It felt a lot more like the other races. And yeah, we always, every once in a while we are running into F1 still missing some shots, as anyone would do when there's so much action going on all at the same time. But yeah, it's a little disappointing to see them take so long to get around to some of the reasons why we're getting yellows, but there were a lot of them. There's a lot of stuff going on, especially when we ran into that wet weather. So I really can't fault them too much this week.
Yeah, just to comment on the feed stuff, I think part of the reason, no matter who's going to run that feed, is literally the way that radio waves work in that region of the world. You're basically looking at a valley. And so if you look at it from the perspective of if you didn't put cell towers in the valley, you wouldn't really have any reception there whatsoever. So not only that, but you have 10 teams with two drivers a team that all are shooting high wave radio antennas everywhere throughout that entire principality. I'd love to see what a microwave cooker kind of looks like, because I bet you probably did some cooking in that paddock this weekend. So that's, I think, is part of the limitation, is just where it is. The other part of it is trying to figure out, you're flipping around through different feeds, trying to figure out, where is the yellow flag. I think that's also part of it too. It comes up yellow flag on the official timing, and it doesn't necessarily tell you where the yellow flag is. And so what I start looking at, because I'm usually looking at the segments, is I'm looking at, okay, who's not making segments? Because the driver who's not making segments is probably the cause of the yellow flag. And I'm sure other people are trying to do that too, but that's a hard thing to do. I'm just looking for my own sake. I'm not then trying to then make a decision on find a camera, point it at that car, and let's find out where the yellow flag is. I think that here is just always going to be an eternal challenge. But I did think overall, I thought the direction was better. I thought the angles were a little bit better. You got to see some of what makes an F1 car around Monaco that you didn't necessarily get to see before, especially around, what is it, that part is you're coming past Casino Square, but before you get to the hairpin. When you're coming down that little road with the bump there, you always used to
Hmm.
see it from the front. Well, this year
Yep.
you saw it from sometimes from actually the rear, and the car's going down and away from you, which I thought was interesting because you could really then see how the rear suspension handles that out. So I had a
Hmm.
bit of some geek moments, watching that. So I thought overall, I think it was improved. I don't think it's by no means is it perfect, and I don't know if they're ever going to get to perfection, but I thought it was a step in the right direction. With respect to Max, I think the Schumacher connotation or comparison is a valid one. I think we are seeing the Max era. We saw the Lewis era. We saw the Vettel era. And before that, we've seen a Schumacher era. I do feel like that's kind of where we're going. So it makes sense to make the comparison. And I think he's worthy of the discussion at this point.
Hmm.
All right, next comment that we got. John checked in from Carolina. John, hope you're feeling better. I know he was battling a bit of a bug over the course of the weekend, but he says, the best Monaco he's seen in the past third of my life. Thank God for rain. I thought it was an interesting strategy race up until the rain, and then when the rain came, it obviously got a whole lot more entertaining watching everybody deal with that variable thrown at them. So yeah, I tend to agree. I think it was one of the better Monaco races. There was definitely tension throughout. You couldn't really turn away from it, and that's basically all you can ask for.
Yeah, I don't think I really have a whole lot to add to that other than it's one of the best Monacos that I've seen as well. I think the rain makes just about any race more interesting, with the exception of the 2021 Belgian Grand Prix, where it made it a whole hell of a lot less interesting. But this time I'll take it. It made for a really good race.
Yeah, yeah. Next email in the queue, Dave Doherty checks in, and he's been fun to interact with most of the weekend. Shout out to you, Dave. I said the race was average, but the rain made it interesting. But of course, this is Monaco in the end. Yeah, I mean, like I would have said, this was a typical Monaco race for the first 52 laps, and then it all kind of went kind of crazy. I was shocked that we did not see more retirements and therefore more variability. But that was we kind of talked about it. We saw more Armco barriers, more softer walls, more ability for the car to hit the wall and keep going, versus you don't necessarily you don't have all the front winglets and stuff that flies off and affects the car as much as you used to just with this formula. So you can bang a car off a wall if you bang it off with the car in the right place, and you can still keep going and still keep going well.
Mhm. Yeah,
All right.
I agree.
No, yeah, sorry. All right.
Go.
Last one. The formula checked in and said, "Hey guys, this is my Monaco GP thoughts. In my last post-race comments, I told you Perez's self-inflicted wounds would always be his Achilles heel. It showed up ugly, and again this weekend. Hopefully, he can bounce back and keep the fight close at the top. Do you feel this weekend is second thought? Do you feel this weekend is a good barometer to judge the Merc upgrades? I personally do not, given the uniqueness of Monaco and the wet running we saw on race day." Cody, I'll let you take that.
For the Mercedes part, I completely agree with you that I don't think that the Mercedes would have really performed much differently with their older version of the car with the zero side pods. I think Monaco is one of those tracks where the car makes less of a difference, and even if the car did make much of a difference, it's so hard to pass around Monaco that like we saw last year with Fernando Alonso holding up like half the field because no one could get around him, and he was just going that slow. I think that we're going to see in Spain a much better indicator of where that Mercedes really stands with the upgrades, and also as you said with the wet running. Everyone says that rain in Formula One is the great equalizer. It takes a lot of the car out of the formula and leaves it more in the hands of the drivers. And that as well, I think, contributed to us not really getting a great indicator of where that Mercedes is really sitting. And on the Perez side of things, also agree that can't really spin it any other way that he did a lot of the damage to himself this weekend, starting right in qualifying with taking himself out in Q1. That was going to hamper him throughout the entire weekend, and he knew that, and it just kind of went from bad to worse. A lot of stuff that happened, I think, was a little out of his control. Maybe the running in the back of Magnussen was, more his fault, but I don't think there was really anything he could do about running into George Russell. F1 seems to agree because they've given Russell a couple of penalty points for that incident post race, and I really like Perez. Seems like a pretty good guy in addition to being a pretty good driver, and I hope that he can bounce back too. I just don't see that he's going to really be able to take the fight to Verstappen though in a meaningful way, for the championship fight.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on Sergio. I think the opportunity was there. I think it was legit there heading into Miami, and I think we saw when the two of them had to do the work, on the same tire to try to make the stint last. We saw who had the advantage, and that was clearly Max. And I know Red Bull, the team, are not going to do necessarily Checo any favors, but I don't think they've done anything to hinder a fight if he was up for it. And it just seems like he's kind of letting it slip through his fingers, which is tough because, we want to see a championship fight, even if it's intra-team as opposed to, between two different teams. At least a fight's a fight. Can he bounce back? It's possible he can find some form. But you had almost 3 street race type circuits in a row, and now that part's over. Now we're getting into the classic European season. He's going to have to find another. He's got to find another gear. I mean, that's really it. He's in the Hall of Very Good. He's got to find that extra step if he wants to make this a championship fight. And it's on him. And he can only control what he can control. He can control what he does in qualifying, and we saw what happened when here, and that really, really hindered him. So yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that it's I'm hoping he can bounce back, but I don't know. I don't know where it's going to come from, but anything is still definitely possible. With respect to the Merc upgrades, I think the only question that the Merc upgrades bringing them here were able to answer was, did they do anything that felt weird? And the answer to that was effectively really no. So that's one question answered. That's the basic question that I think bringing the upgrades here helped them do and get a bit of a jump on, where they don't have to, you're not doing as much correlation work in FP1 in Spain. Is there correlation work still to do? Of course there is. And you're hoping to see it, in the speed chart, in the speed trap, and in the lap times. So yeah, this next FP1 session, the FP2 session on Friday, for them is a big deal. We got to put that car through its paces, and we got to see what this package really has in it. And then once you kind of realize that, okay, it's doing what we thought it was going to do, then you can start to maximize it. So yeah, I do think you're going to see in this round in Spain and the round after that, if Mercedes are going to make a step, that's where I think you're going to see it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we will move into our weekly awards. We'll start with the rubbish. I'll start with James, who chimed in again as he's driving himself back and forth to and from Lower Michigan today. Again, safe travels all the way, buddy. I get that, especially through that stretch in Indiana, which is just a nightmare. He said Checo's championship chances, not the place to make a mistake in quali. And then he shouts out, honorable mention to the Lewis to Ferrari rumors. No, just no. I think that story has kind of fizzled out. I've not seen a whole lot of traction beyond, especially when Lewis came out and said, yeah, I'm pretty darn close to signing an extension with Mercedes. So I didn't see any counter to that or a big, journalist defend his honor over the course of the weekend. So I think that story is, for the most part, at least right now, kind of dead. But Cody, what was your thought on the rubbish?
We've kind of talked about it a lot already. My rubbish award for this weekend sadly goes to Sergio Perez. Not putting it together this weekend, not putting it together in quality, not able to do anything during the race. A lot of little incidents here and there turn into a Red Bull guinea pig at the end to try to, eliminate any questions whether Max could win the race or not. hoping that this isn't going to kill any confidence that he's built up since the start of the season, because up until now, it's been really strong. And I hope that he continues to perform well and squeeze a few more race wins at least out of the season, if not being able to take the fight directly to Max.
All right, very good. So my rubbish this weekend will go. I hate to pick on them because a lot of people pick on them, but the F1 TV and specifically the driver-specific feeds. And look, this is Monaco. This is where to enhance your experience, to know what's going on, you need the radio comms. And I could hear the engines fine, but for a large portion of this weekend, I could not hear Lando's radio calls or Oscar Piastri's radio calls or a lot of the McLaren overall. I don't know what happened. And when I brought it to their support system, they were surprised that no one else had said anything. They did do their due diligence. I will give them credit. And they did manage to flip it on in time for the rain to show up. So at least I got the good part of those discussions. But this was kind of critical. I'm shocked that you guys aren't monitoring it a little bit better. It's a major part. We are paying for this thing. And I did just renew my subscription. I'm fine to do it, but I want to get what I'm paying for. So the folks at F1 TV, I know you're working hard. I know it's not an easy job to manage 20 driver feeds over the course of a race, not to mention 2 different English broadcasts and a number of different languages that are going on. It's a big job, but you got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we will move into our next award, the analysis paralysis. I think this one we're going to have pretty much a clean sweep here. James has started out with saying Aston Martin, had they gone inters first, it could have made for a close finish at the top. I tend to agree. Cody, who's your nominee here?
My nominee is also Aston Martin for analysis paralysis. Several points throughout the race. Why did they start Alonso on the hard tire when that was his best chance to take the lead? Why, as the rain was coming onto the track, did they pit Alonso and put him on more slicks just so they could pit him again and put him on the wets later? That one got an out loud, "What the hell are you doing?" During the race, because I thought that they were pretty much throwing away any chance that they had for the win at that point, whether it was a Hail Mary or not. But what do you think for analysis paralysis? I think
I am in lockstep with everybody here. It's got to go to Aston Martin. Rain call notwithstanding, because I can actually see the rain call to a certain extent because you didn't know what it was. Ted Kravitz, I thought, was being brutally honest when he said, like, right now in the pit lane, he thought it was the right call when they actually changed the tires. Now, it turned out not to be. That's always hindsight 2020. I can almost forgive that. But the part that I can't forgive is why you're not at least putting him on the same tire as Max. Why are you not giving him a fighting chance going into turn 1, into that Sandoval corner? That's your best shot. Track position here is everything. If you put Max in a position where it's either going to be he wins the race or he finishes in 20th, he's probably going to be a lot more finishing P2 because he's got bigger aspirations than you do. This was your shot. It's not going to come around again. I mean, maybe in Hungary is legitimately when I would see the best, maybe if Alonso could put together some mega qualifying laps. The characteristics of the Red Bull are not going to be so dominant. Why you didn't want to take it here? Race wins are hard to get. I do see big things coming for Aston Martin. They're putting things together. They've been doing a lot of things right this year. They felt like it was okay with P2, and I don't get it. But anyway. All right. So we will move on. Our next award, the Dark Horse of the Day. Some interesting nominees here as I'm reading through the notes here. James has chimed in and says the cranes in Monaco for showing the world what the teams have all been hiding, the underside of the floors. Cody, what's your thought here?
I think that the cranes one is quite funny. Definitely some of the cleanest shots at the underside of the cars came from those incidents where they were lifting away the cars. So yeah, definitely a good dark horse there. My dark horse, personally, I got to go with Esteban Ocon for this race. If you had told me before the Monaco weekend that Alpine was going to have a driver on the podium, I would have thought something absolutely crazy happened where Red Bulls were all out, Fernando Alonso was out, Ferraris were out, something crazy is happening during the race that's causing Alpine to be able to make it up on the podium. But no, really, it came down to Esteban Ocon having a monster qualifying lap that saw him in fourth place, managed to turn her into third place during the race, and never looked back. And he looked extremely happy being on the podium. It was very nice to see him up there. It was like he'd won the race. Very, very happy to see him get that success.
All right, very good. I think that is a well thought out, great nominee, but I'm going to go total homer here, and I'm going to say Lando Norris in the wet, baby. Look, I haven't had a whole lot to cheer about. I was even a little worried at the end of the Indy 500 that the best result I was going to see for my boys all month was going to be this P9. But man, Lando in the wet is something special to watch. Just looking at the timings, clearly was the fastest throughout that entire final stint there once they got him on the right tire. Passing his teammate on merit, unbiased there, passing Yuki Tsunoda on merit, legit move into turn one there. I thought those were two good moves. And then to pull back almost 20 plus seconds on a Ferrari, granted, Sainz had a rough day, but he was still, trying to get position there in 7 laps was amazing. I feel like, God, if only the rain had come 4 laps earlier, maybe what else would we have seen? But, that's just kind of the way that it was. So good on what's been a frustrating year for me as a fan to watch Lando have some fun. So I'll give him the dark horse for that. All right. So we will move on to our driver of the day. I think this is going to be a clean sweep. James has chimed in and said, Max, Q3, Sector 3, you, sir, are ridiculous. I love the reference to Devin Hester. I think that is more than accurate. I think that's a great accolade. Max Verstappen, you are ridiculous. I like that. Cody, what's your thought?
I am in complete agreement and going with Max Verstappen. Fernando Alonso looked like he was on pace for the pole, and Max said, "No, sir," or "No, I don't think you will," and turned it into the craziest Sector 3 that we've seen in a while. And then no matter what happened during the race, lap traffic, rain, really, really old medium tires, like he weathered it all and took that win by a pretty significant margin. So, Max, driver of the day for me for sure.
Yeah, I am in full lockstep with the two of you on this. It is Max Verstappen, my driver of the day. That quali lap is the thing we're going to talk about when we talk about legends in this sport. That is Max Verstappen, I think, legitimately taking his first real legend, one of those legendary moments that define a career. It's a lap we're going to talk about for a very long time, as rightly we should be talking about it. And I don't, again, I don't care whether you like him or not, whether you like what Red Bull does with their drivers or you don't. Bar none, when it came down to it, and he was pushed, one of the few times we've really seen him pushed all the way, the guy showed up with the goods and did something that we all thought, myself included, was not possible given the circumstances that he was presented with. And he did something that was great, and that was greatness. I can't say it any better than that. So Max Verstappen, clearly the driver of the day. All right, so we will now reveal the prediction results. Cody and I went and did some dueling over the course of the weekend. Cody finishes the Monaco Grand Prix with 5 points. He got the quali lap time, P1 for Max on the podium. He got both the lap times. The race lap time is closer. He got the P9 bonus pick with Lando Norris, and he gets the prop bet point because we did, of course, see the rain tires. I was close, but not close enough this weekend. I finished with 4 points. I had Max for pole, so I got that. I got P1 on the podium, so I did get that, but my other 2 podium picks didn't pan out. I got Lando for the P9 bonus pick, and I also got the prop bet. But you take it on the lap times, so you get the 2 points for this weekend, which means now we are in a dead heat moving forward. on 6 points apiece.
Yeah, back in the
So
mix.
you have undone my early advantage, sir, and good job for that. All right, so we're going to actually take one last quick break. We're going to re-rack, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the Indy 500 because that was the Monaco looked ridiculous, and then the Indy 500 got very ridiculous at the end. All right, welcome back to season 5. It's episode number 14 of the Outlife F1 podcast. We've talked the Monaco GP, but now we're going to shift gears and talk a little IndyCar, baby. Oh, epic. Epic. No disrespect to NBC. I thought they did a fine job of the coverage this month, but that theme brings me back, man. The 107th running of the Indy 500 was on Sunday. If you managed to stay tuned, I know if you're in Britain, all you had to do was stay on Sky. They had the coverage throughout. I think they went commercial free, which I think was pretty damn cool. So,
God,
we'll
I
just
wish we
kind
had
of
that here.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, lots of. They did a decent job of keeping, for the most part, at split screen. And obviously, when they got some yellows, they doubled down on the cautions to try to get as many ads in. And I thought they did a good job of sticking with it at the end. I mean, I've seen basketball games go to commercial break with 2 seconds on the clock. I'm like, really? Like, come on. But anyway. I thought it was a hell of a month of May, in terms of not just starting out with the GMR Grand Prix and then moving into the Indy 500 proper. We'll take you through the top 10. It was pretty much a regular, very strategic race early. And then it kind of erupted with some incidents late. And there's a couple things I did definitely want to talk about. But Joseph Newgarden from the USA becomes the first American driver to take the win at the Indy 500 since Alex Rossi in 2016. He finished in P1. Marcus Ericsson trying to do the double and go back-to-back for the first time in a very long time since that happened. He finished just short in P2. AJ Foyt brought 2 very fast cars, and Santino Ferrucci, that's a name you may recognize, comes home in P3. Alex Palou, who had probably the best car on the grid all day, if not for a very unfortunate pit stop where he got kind of speared by Rinus VeeKay there, probably comes home, probably takes the win, but he managed to come all the way back from like 19th all the way up to P4. Alex Rossi comes home in P5. Scott Dixon for Ganassi, P6. Takuma Sato, P7. Connor Daly and Ed Carpenter Racing in the top 10, P8 there. Colton Herta, the top Andretti finisher. He finished in P9. And Rinus VeeKay, even though he got a penalty for that unfortunate pit stop and the collision with Palou there, managed to bring it back home in P10. Cody, what was your initial take on the race? I know you and I were texting as we were going back and forth. It went on, it seemed forever, but a couple talking points we'll talk about, but I'll let you take the lead here. What you thought?
It definitely went on forever near the end. Like the first, so 200 laps, 500 miles. First 150 of that was pretty run of the mill. You had, some caution flags here and there, little incidents here and there. But overall, pretty typical IndyCar oval race. A lot of the strategy involved for the Indy 500 is lately seems to be trading that first place if you're running up at the front, because I guess if you are running up at the front, you tend to get more tire wear. So you see a lot of drivers trading off that front spot because they don't want it that much. A lot of we do have refueling in IndyCar, and so that strategy comes into play. Famously, Alexander Rossi won his Indy 500 win in his rookie year in 2016 on a fuel gamble. Ended up running out of fuel as he was, pretty much crossing the finish line.
Yep.
So that comes into play. First 3 quarters of the race, like super crazy exciting. It's really cool seeing how fast those cars go around the track. The three wide rolling start is also unique and exciting. And then near the end, it really started to get crazy. I remember I was trying to do some house cleaning because I was going to be going over to my fiance's parents' house to barbecue, and I was trying to clean up my house beforehand, doing some vacuuming in the living room here while I've got the race on in the background. I'm looking up at the race in between vacuum. I look down for a sec. I look back up, and suddenly Kyle Kirkwood is like upside down against the outside wall, skidding along, sparks everywhere, and I was like, "What the hell happened?" It was a very spectacular crash. If you want to take it away for a sec for the crash, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, wow. I think you said it really good. Like I said, for the most part, it was going to be a strategy race, and then all kind of chaos kind of broke out late, as tends to happen at an Indy 500. You saw the big hitter teams at the front for the majority of what I would say is the straightforward part of the race. We saw Arrow McLaren do very well. We saw the Ganassi team doing very well. We saw and then also the theme of the first part of the race was the Penske team slowly but surely working their way up into contention. And then, the incident between it was Rosenquist and it was Kyle Kirkwood. Rosenquist got up into so as these guys are running around, bits of the tire coming off, and what I think, in F1 terms we would call clag are referred to on an oval as more marbles. So it looked like Felix Rosenquist got more up into the marbles, tried to check it up. He hits the wall as he's coming down. Kyle Kirkwood also then kind of spun, and as Rosenquist is spinning, just the angle was very odd and not something that you would necessarily plan for. But what ended up happening was the tether that keeps the tires connected to the car, even if they come loose from the suspension, broke, and the tire ends up going over the catch fence. So that was actually quite a scary moment. It turns out it went into a golf cart park and / parking lot that was hosting in one of the parking spots. There was this white Chevy, and that poor car took the brunt of the damage from the tire. Thank God it was just a car and not a person. I actually did find an interview with owner of said car. It turns out that the car was called Snowball. And they had, this African American woman, very nice woman in full get up gear. She was totally into the race. Ended up becoming a bit of a local celebrity, as it turns out, because the car had to get towed away. In fact, the guy who first took the picture of the car on Twitter as he's leaving the track, the tow truck is like following him, and he's literally going, "I can't get away from this car now, can I?" So they had an interview with her. She was very nice. The track is offered at least to give her a temporary car. I hope they actually buy her a new car. This would be a really nice thing. But anyway, thank God, in a potentially unsafe situation that we ended up with it, nobody got hurt out of there. That was the best possible answer. So that kind of kicked off, and then caution flags beget caution flags. Every time they would try to get a restart going, it wasn't lasting very long because it was go time at that point in the race. And the driving standards, as with a lot of ovals, tend to go out the window when it comes time to go time. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. And we ended up with multiple stoppages. They were trying to get, obviously the track officials wanted to get the race finished under green. It got so bad that the last red flag was actually as they were completing lap 198, which meant that, no warm-up lap. You basically had one circuit around, green and white shown at the same time, and then next flag would have won it, and they ended up making it all the way back around. It stayed green throughout the one-lap shootout, and then, Newgarden ends up taking it with a move right on the start. So you did not want to be the leader on the start, and Marcus Ericsson, who had made some good restarts earlier in the race, found himself in the unenviable position of being P1 with one restart to go. And so he was not thrilled about it. I'm sure, he cited safety issues. I didn't see anything from a safety perspective. It is the largest track on the IndyCar calendar. It's 2.5 miles. There's plenty of space. There was plenty of chance for Marcus to make a move or a counter move to try to counteract it. even in the space of one lap. It didn't seem like, had we seen carnage on the last lap, a la Australia or something, I think the decision to restart with one lap to go gets a lot more scrutiny. But it seemed to be okay. So, I mean, I know it was a big talking point amongst some Twitter circles, but I was okay with it. I get it that, we want to get that race finished under green if we can. It was a little bit of odd marshaling or odd race control at the end, but that's part of the game, and I think everybody understood that.
Yeah, they definitely they had a hard time once we got within like those last 20 laps or even 10 laps. It seemed like the race just wouldn't get going for any amount of time. Pretty much they'd get the race resumed, green flag, they go a lap or two, or maybe not even that much in some instances, and then you'd have this big crash, and they would red flag the race again because of that desire, I assume, to leave as much of the race left for a green flag finish as possible. Several crashes after that Kyle Kirkwood crash. In fact, sadly, one that occurred right after the restart. Pato O'Ward, driving for Arrow McLaren, had been running very well and up front throughout the day. Was one of the favorites to take home the win, driving a very, very cool looking black Arrow car. And unfortunately, tried to make a risky move right at the restart and ended up going around and destroying the car. So feel for him. That was very unfortunate. And then, yes, going into the very end, you've got the red flag that comes out that brings it to what's going to be a one lap shootout. I thought that they were going to finish that under caution. There have been many Indy 500s that have been decided that way and finished under the yellow flag. And Marcus Ericsson was in the position to take home a back-to-back Indy 500 win, which would have been very cool, admittedly. And then they decided to, forego that. Normally it takes a few caution laps, warming up tires and whatnot before they go green. They decided that they were just going to red flag it at 198. They went back out for that 199 lap, just the one lap around, and then went back to green for one lap. And Marcus Ericsson, you don't want to be in that first place. You're kind of a sitting duck. And Joseph Newgarden, who had been running up front for a while there, trading off first place, managed to get around him and made maybe a little bit of a questionable move coming around to the start-finish line.
Yeah,
extremely low dive.
We're going to talk about that in a minute. I want to talk about that in a minute. But to talk a little bit about O'Ward, I make no bones about it. I'm a Lando fan in Formula One. I follow O'Ward and Rossi are the two guys that I'm mega into in IndyCar. I've been a Rossi fan since the Marussia days, since I watched him almost score points at Circuit of the Americas, which would have been an amazing achievement in a car that had no qualms of ever being in that position, but he ended up managing to get there. But so I was following O'Ward's radio, and from a strategy perspective, the Arrow McLarens in general were doing really good on fuel mileage. So they were able to stretch it, and then like I've said many times, when you're watching any sort of race, it's good to have a team radio, whomever you want to pick, because you're going to get so much more out of it than just a traditional broadcast. Now, the broadcast did a good job of covering what had eventually happened, but in the moment, like, you knew based on the other stints, their fuel mileage should have been around 35, 36 laps in a stint. Well, he's about 30 laps into his stint, and he comes on the radio and goes, "Fuel alarm." And I go, "Fuel alarm? That's a problem." But they caught it. They knew they said, "Okay, we'll box you next lap." So he went from having one of the best fuel mileages to now that was like the beginning of the window, but he was still in it. And as it turns out, what they found out is that they weren't getting the fuel all the way into the car. Something had happened with the mechanism. And the odd part was they didn't swap it out. They couldn't tell him why. So, I mean, it was kind of really strange in the moment what was going on, but Pato then just had to put his head down. He dropped all the way, I think, the 12th or 13th place at one point. He got a lucky caution, the Grosjean caution, in like the 160s, brought him back, because otherwise I don't think he finished. He wasn't going to be in contention, but he ends up at one point making his last stop. He comes out, he cycles back in. He's P3 with a full enough tank of fuel to where he could run full bore and the newest tires on the grid. And I'm like, this is Indy picking him. That's what happened. Like you had the moment and you overcame it. And usually when you have the moment, that's usually it. But I thought it was his to win. And then he makes this dive bomb move at Marcus Ericsson, and I tweeted about it with a couple people, trying to ask me to, judge the move. If that's lap 199, I make that move. I dive bomb on the inside there. There were still 7 laps left. I know he was seeing red mist because he got taken on the restart because he was in the unenviable position of on that restart being in P1, and he drops all the way to P3, and he's trying to make a position back. Just if you pull out there, you're still in it. And you still have to realize you're in the best position of all the players on the grid there. Discretion, better part of valor, man. But I can't fault him for trying to make a move. But at the same time, I wanted to be like, this is why you're still 24.
Yep.
So anyway, that was the end of Pato's day. But the highest finishing McLaren ended up being Alex Rossi. But to talk about the one lap shootout, I think we already kind of did. But to talk about the end of it, and this was something I did tweet out about, and I think I've ruffled a couple feathers out there with this. But there's the shot as they're coming out of turn 4, and NBC had it as a shot from the vantage point of turn 4, where you watch, and usually at the end of these races, you see the snake thing happen, and they're trying to use every bit of racetrack, and we get that. But where they ended up was Newgarden ended up, and so did Ericsson, ended up all 4 wheels over it. Now, it's not a solid line, but it's a dotted line, and that's supposed to be your pit commit line. The shot is literally 2 cars, and if Newgarden doesn't jink back to the right, like he ends up doing, it looks like they're either going to hit the point at which the pit lane starts, or they're going to go sailing down the pit lane at 220 miles an hour. Now, look, I get it. There weren't necessarily a thing called track limits here. There was no hard deck for a line in or out. We saw passes on the grass. People were getting praised for the passes on the grass. But come on, man. We're flirting with something really, really dangerous here. That move, I know it was legal. I'm not suggesting that this race result should change, but you got to look at this rule and you got to institute something going forward, or we're going to be talking about something a lot worse than a tire going over the barriers and hitting a Chevy car named Snowball.
Perfect segue, honestly. But yeah, all it takes is when you're running that far down, like, that wall isn't going to budge for your car, going 240 miles an hour. And while, they're professionals, they know what they're doing, but the crazy snake thing and what Andy's kind of talked about, if anyone, doesn't really watch the Indy 500, there's a lot of incentive to do this sneaking back and forth across the straightaways in an effort to break the air draft behind you, so that the car behind you doesn't get as good a run on you. And they went so far down. All it takes is at that point losing control of your car a little bit to the point where you can't steer, and you're gonna turn into a little car missile going into a wall, and there's gonna be half a car left, and it's not gonna be pretty. So I'm in agreement with you that not technically against the rules. There's no infraction there that's going to take away that win from Joseph Newgarden, but maybe should be some kind of rule on that going forward.
Yeah, and if you've listened to the show, I'm not a big track limits guy. I hate them, but you have to have a clear out of bounds between what is pit lane and what is racetrack. And that was not racetrack to me. And when I saw it, I was honestly shocked. One, that he pulled it off. and two that they did that. And I was literally, and it for me kind of ruined the end because I wanted to be excited for this end, but I was literally sitting there going, "Oh, come on, you can't do that! What are you doing?" And then I was waiting to hear, were they going to investigate? Obviously not. So again, it's clearly within the rules that they've done. I mean, I've watched IndyCar make, kind of a mockery of track limits in places before. I mean, look at the race at Coda a few years ago. Look at turn 19. I mean, they're literally off into the MotoGP runoff, and they said that was okay. Fine, I get that, and if we all sign up for it, and that's the standard we want to run with, fine. I'm just worried. I'd hate to have a bad or a tragic result happen when it's something that we might have been able to prevent, and that was really all I was saying about that. But anyway, I thought it was an epic race. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead and finish your thought.
Oh no, I mean, I thought the month of May was an epic month. All the way around. I think the way that IndyCar did the qualifying format, I know they kind of change it up every couple years to try to see, but I thought with the Fast Six and the last chance qualifying, the fact we had bumping, I know there's Rahal Letterman is happy that this race is over and they can move on, and specifically Graham Rahal, who was out, then back in, and then his car wouldn't fire up, and then he starts the race 2 laps down, and that was basically end of his day. But yike. For him, but yeah, I mean, and now they go quickly into Detroit, and the IndyCar schedule kicks off, and they're going to get real busy. F1 we know is going to get real busy, so we've got lots of good racing in 2 series. I don't know how much we'll get to talk about IndyCar as the rest of the year goes on, but I hope we do. We'll see if there's a fun race or something that I really want to talk about. I run the agenda here, so I may put it in.
Last thing that I wanted to touch on was
go ahead.
Joseph Newgarden's race celebration. I thought was very cool. Joseph Newgarden won the IndyCar Championship, I believe, in 2017, 2019. He's been in IndyCar for a while. Was still missing that Indy 500 win, and you could tell he really, really wanted it because his celebration was totally nuts. Brings the car back around after winning the race, parks it on the bricks on the start-finish line, gets out of the car and runs into the grandstands to celebrate with the fans, which I didn't see coming. I thought it was pretty nuts and very cool to see him that excited and celebrating with fans. It took him a minute to get back out of there and back to his car so they could take him to victory lane, but. Yeah, just the sheer excitement was very cool.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he had said, in his post-race comments that he had planned that for a long time, that he was going to literally go be a man of the people. So it is another unique Indy celebration. I mean, Helio's done the climbing of the catch fence, and they, dubbed him Spider-Man, I guess. I don't know what you'd call him other than man of the people. But it's kind of what it felt like. It felt like a man of the people celebration or a mosh pit. I mean, I don't know what else, they have a concert that goes around called the Snake Pit that's on the infield there, which is pretty epic too. So it kind of felt like a bit of a mosh situation. And, the fans obviously didn't get hurt or anything by it. So, that's always good to see, but he was very exuberant. He was very happy. The emotion, you could tell that wasn't fake, that was real. Joseph Newgarden's won a lot of races. He's probably one of the more talented American drivers. If he had maybe a different path, he might have had the talent to maybe make it to F1. But I mean, in IndyCar, he's driving for, Roger Penske, who's a great understander of talent. I said it in the preview. Don't be sleeping on that Team Penske. They're always there. They're always in it. And in the moment, he was able to do it. He was able to get it done. Good win for him. Good win for American racing, I think, overall. And congratulations to him. I tip my hat. And then he had to get back in the car. They had to figure out how to get it to victory lane because, at Indy, they do that whole thing where the car starts on the ground and gets literally elevated up, which is actually really cool to see. We've seen some instances of stuff like that in F1, and it tends to get panned, but here it makes total sense. So keep it going, Roger. I thought that was a cool feature. All right. Well, we've now gone We've given you a double, folks, out there. We had a 2-for-1 special. We hope you've enjoyed our little talk about IndyCar and the state of play there. We're going to be quick damn turnaround for us. So we're going to get this one up and posted as quickly as we can. And then we got to turn around. We got to talk about Spain because that is coming at us thick and fast. Next weekend, it is race week again. We've made a decision because it's technically Monday here. We're going to do our preview on Thursday evening, so it'll come out Friday. I'll be able to be on that for sure. I don't know for sure if I will be on the review. It is dependent on whether I can get my hotspot to work or if I want to go find a gas station in the town that I'm in. I'm going up to the hinterlands of northern Wisconsin. I've not been up there for a long time, so I don't know what the state of play is with cell reception. If I could be on, I will. So I guess that will be, my final thought on this will be, will there be rain in Spain? And Andy will be on the review. All will be revealed. So if nothing else, if you don't like the sound of my voice, maybe you're rooting for me not to be on. I don't know, but we'll see how it goes. Like I said this year, we're moving like water throughout all of this, so we try to keep the dynamic going. But Cody and I think James actually wants to be on the preview, so he'll be joining us the first time this season on a preview, and I think we're slated. I really do think we're going to try to get all 4 of us on next week if I can actually join. But we'll do our best to cover the Spanish Grand Prix throughout the course of the weekend on social media and other places. So look out for us as always. Feel free to interact with us as always. Cody, any final thoughts before we call it a night?
Looking forward to the Spain chicane not being there, and hopefully makes for a more exciting Spanish Grand Prix.
Yeah, upgrades I think will be the talk of the early part of the weekend. I think we're going to see a lot of teams bringing stuff that they've been holding back to here because it's a test track. The practices I think will be very entertaining. And again, we'll see if the weather. There was a 57% chance I saw already on the extended forecast for rain in Spain during the race. So who knows? It could get a little spicy. And we know Fernando's going to be motivated because he's going to want to put on a show in front of his home crowd. So for Cody, for James, for D, who I'm sorry couldn't be, for James and D, who I'm sorry couldn't be on the show tonight, just circumstances kind of played out that way. For Cody, it's been Andy. This is, as always, fun to do. We love to do it. And we will catch you next week. And as always, may all your laps be fast.